さあ、約束の時だ、碇シンジ君。今度こそ君だけは幸せにしてみせるよ。
Hello and welcome back once again to Yellow Card TCG. This role here bringing you a bit of a different style of deck profile. DPT10 Dragon Masquerade has been out for a few days, weeks now, and I thought I'd finally share with you the updates I've been experimenting with for Avantgarda. Now, I've been playing mostly Gandiva for the last few locals, and it's a deck that I put a lot of practice into, but Avantgarda is still, one of my favorite pet decks, and we've got a lot of really new, interesting toys in set 10. So let's take a look at what the new set brings, what a new list might look like, what we can think about while we wait for Ala D'Argento to come out in English, as well as some of the other options in set 10 that could be worth experimenting with. So I'll go over the list first, and then we'll talk about some of the other changes and some of the other options. So first things first, let's start off with the things that don't change. So our trigger lineup is mostly still the same. You've got your Overtrigger, 4 fronts, because again, Avantgarda is a restanding Vanguard, you want to be able to pump the rear guards to hit numbers, and 7 crits. And I've only gone with 4 vanillas and 3 insoles, because sometimes having a 5k booster makes a difference. Although now with some of the new tools, it's very rare that you'll call triggers down to guard. But again, the insole plus 2k doesn't come up nearly often enough, so whether you go 4-3 or 3-4 shouldn't make a huge difference. The only thing to talk about are the lineup of counter heals, because here I'm going for 2-2 split between crit, counter heal, and the vanilla heal, and that's only because with Eva and Gandiva being popular in the meta, having the extra 10k shield, 15k shield against those decks on the early turns can really give you that huge boost in surviving, especially going second. But beyond that, you could just play 4 vanilla heals, whatever. I don't think it makes that big of a deal. The next part of the deck that doesn't change is obviously your Persona Rides and your Gratis Gradal. Now, Festival Collection hasn't come out yet, but it is coming out. But even despite Festival Collection, I think we're still going to run this Regalis piece, because this is a deck that cares about Persona Ride, so you want to have as many Persona Rides as physically possible. And lastly, for the part that doesn't change are your defensive tools, which is your PG and Elementaria Sanctitude, your Sentinels. There's pretty much no reason to ever not play these in a deck, and in fact, with how much drawing and plussing the deck's capable of now, these become even easier to just throw out there when you need to. You don't have to worry about oh, what do I need to keep for next turn? It's just, okay, I just need to guard, I can guard. Again, especially with how many crit gaining effects there are, with Jet and Messiah being very popular as well, just having that guaranteed nope, this is fine, I can survive, is just always good to have. Now the rest of the deck is where everything changes. You've still got your orders, and here I'm still running a 3 of the grade 2, 2 grade 3, 1 grade 2, 1 grade 1 lineup, and I've added a Refablishment dock, which I'll talk about in a bit. Grade 2 and grade 1 lineup now looks completely different. You've seen that we are much lighter on grade 1s and much heavier on grade 2s, and part of that is because of the fact that we've added in Refablishment dock. So now we have these grade 2s that can now boost, so we don't need grade 1s as much anymore to make numbers, and the grade 1 that they do have now still countercharges, which thus replaces Bobomie. So talking about grade 1s, I'm actually going to talk about Hanada halfway first, because I think he might just be the best card in the deck. It is on play, counterblast 1 draw, and then whenever he boosts your Vanguard, if you've played a strategy this turn, you countercharge 1, which is absolutely insane. It means that you can commit all your counterblast early during the main phase for the Fry High or whatever, even the Dock if you don't have the Habitable Zone. And then you'll still be able to get Avantgarda's resound off no matter what, because this will always be able to countercharge. The fact that it can also draw in the early game means that if you're getting rushed, you can convert that counterblast to early pluses, which you'll then refund with the countercharge on boost anyway, which is great. And in fact, because he can countercharge the moment you play an order, going first, the first time you can attack will be grade 2, at which point you'll have already searched for the grade 1 order, and then have played it. So during turn 2, going first, and you have 1 damage, he's pretty much on play, draw 1, because he countercharges on boost to refund it, which is, again, really, really nutty. The only downside is that obviously he is a retired target, so against things like Gandiva, Jet, what have you, you won't be able to reliably countercharge all the time, but at least there'll still be more than once compared to say a Bumblebee, which you can never recycle. Because at least against Jet, if they bot deck him, you can draw him again or something along those lines. And even if you just get retired, he just gets retired, we're playing 4 instead of 3, so there's a little bit more chance to see them. You can always call him without drawing a card and still get the counter charge on boost. in terms of the Grey 2s that return, I'll talk about Habitable in a moment, but we're keeping Enlighten Gauge and we're keeping Freiheit. And initially, like, in my first few draft lists, I cut down the ratios of these cards by quite a lot. Like, I went down to 2 Enlighten Gauge, 2 Freiheit, try and make room for, more of this guy, more of some other cards I'll talk about in a moment. And what I found is that while the other new cards are great, these still directly contribute to the deck's game plan. Like, Freiheit being able to search for Persona Rides is absolutely great because even though we have a lot more plussing in the form of Habitable Zone, we don't have that much more plussing to guarantee Persona Ride all the time. So having extra like Freiheits, especially on turn 3, lets you mulligan aggressively. You can put back Cup, you can put back Persona Rides, find other pieces, find hand into halfways, and then draw into Freiheit later, then search for Persona Rides for deck thinning, or even just to discard them for ride fodder. That's also fine. And then for Enlighten Gauge, now we don't have Alla D'Argento, which means that we don't have a way to reliably recycle orders, and the only other order search is Habitable Zone, which costs a counterblast and isn't always reliable. So having Enlighten Gauge to be able to use the soul that we're generating and then get the orders back from there helps you from turn 4 onwards. Because the thing with cutting like Panterai and all these other bits and pieces is that you have no more soul use in the deck other than Habitable Zone's Ride Phase effect and Enlighten Gauge. And you're putting an order from your order zone into soul every turn. So being able to like soul blast them out and get them back, I think Enlighten Gauge really does solve all this deck's like clunkiness, especially on turn 4 and 5. It's the card that I miss the most. And when I put him back up to 4, I really I did not regret putting it back up to 4. Like, spare copies can be discarded for Persona Ride, spare copies can just sit in the back row and boost with the Refablishment dock. It's just a super reliable piece on the board to have at all times. And yeah, this card's been more than pulling its weight. I don't like it, it's not like the best card in the deck right now, but it has definitely, I think, will stay in the deck until Alla D'Argento comes out. So the next main addition to the deck is Refablishment Dock and Habitable Zone. Now, the one downside of Habitable Zone compared to other cyclers and other decks is that because unis have Sora Period in Soul, you can never ever you can discard Habitable Zone on turn 1, you just can't use the effect on turn 1 because you can never Soul Blast this. So it's only really useful on turns 2 and 3. But then, unlike other decks, it has a lot of use on turn 4. Now, all Brantgate decks have access to this combo, which is Persona Ride, Core Zone, Search Dock, play the dock for free, draw 1, and then give all your units boost. Now, unfortunately, we can't fully abuse the giving boost as much as, say, Ava or Wellstra can, because we have a bunch of grade 2s which are already 10k base. Hannah the Halfway is pretty much always going to be 10k when he boosts anyway, so we're not making any nice magic numbers. Like, the best thing you're going to be able to do is have Enlighten Gauge and Requa on the same column, and this will be a 35k base before Persona Ride, which is cool, but nothing too impressive. But just so that being able to extra commit these grade 2s without making them go to waste is really useful. Like back in set 9, the number of times where I had to call Freiheit to the back row rearguard circle just so I can search the Persona Ride and then attack with my actual 15k bodies was really annoying. Whereas now I can get value of the Freiheit because he'll be a 10k booster no matter what, which is still pretty cool. And of course, even though it's only active for turns 2 and 3, the Soul Blast 1 bot deck to draw when you ride for ride deck is just super useful to have, helps you dig for pieces, helps you maintain hand size, just overall really, really good. So the last new card I've added is Renner. I don't know how to pronounce that, it's German, I'm sure someone will correct me.
Renner.
One of my many friends who speak German. And this was kind of like the flex slot. It could have been another Freiheit, it could have been another order, which I think is not actually a bad idea. It could have been a lot of things. And the main other card I think I want to draw attention to is Solide Sterner. Now, this is a card I've seen a lot of other lists run, and I'm personally not a huge fan, because at the end of the day, we're only running 5 orders realistically, and 2 of them are being searched by the ride deck. So in a 30, 35 card deck, maybe by the time you get to turn 3, turn 4, and you use this, you've only already got 2 or 3 targets to begin with, and one of them really wants to be searched off of the Habitable Zone anyway. So this is pretty much almost never going to plus you, in my opinion. And even though it does like have that potential upside, the fact that it only becomes a 15k as opposed to a 20k compared to Rec Werner, I think just makes that, it's not a huge difference because again, your numbers like 20, 25, 30, 35, that won't always make a big difference. But when it does, I think it is going to be fairly impactful. And on top of that, the condition for him getting the 5k is when you play your order for the turn. And sure, you're always going to be doing that because of hand and a halfway anyway. But let's say that you get to like turn 4, you've got one of these left in the order zone because the other one already went to soul. You don't have habitable zone. If you can't play another order, this loses power buff. And sure, if you don't have an order in your thing, if you don't have an order to put into soul, this won't be 10, 15, 20, it'll only be 15. But the 15 here will still be better than the 10k here. And for that reason, like, I think just having an always 20k body is just that tiny bit better than having a usually 15k body. Because even in the worst case scenario, during your turn, if you have Avantgarda, this will always be 15k, and you'll always have an Avantgarda Vanguard. So this will never, ever be 10k. And having that huge numbers in exchange for whiffing a plus that you're going to expect to whiff most of the time, I think it's just really not worth it. Like, again, I see the value to this card, and I don't think playing is necessarily wrong. And especially if you're playing a list that's a bit more luck greedy, like say for example, you cut all 4 Enlighten Gauge, 4 of these, and you just play more orders, that's not bad either. Like, you're kind of solving the same problem in different ways. Like, I'm choosing Enlighten Gauge because A, it gets the 15k, B, it uses up a soul, which is a resource that you're generating tons of and not using on anything else, and B, it's reliable and repeatable. Whereas here, by playing these, and like say cutting these for more orders, you're solving the issue of not being able to recycle orders by just having more orders than you need. But then the downside is that then you're playing more cards in the deck that don't have shield, and you're then playing more cards that you quote unquote don't want to draw in the early game. I don't know, like maybe bricks at that point when you're trying to go off. Like you might end up, if you play 4 copies of the grade 3 order, you might be tempted to discard one of them to your ride deck on turn 1, but then you're able to get them back, so it's kind of like you haven't really solved that problem as it is. And then another solution that I saw a list in JP running that I really like the idea of is playing the Eigen, the Welstra promo, alongside Combine Rusher. Now you might be thinking, why are you playing this grade 1 order? Because you can never operate it, because Freiheit needs to have a Blitz Vanguard to operate, or Welstra Vanguard to operate. And the answer is, when this card gets discarded, it goes into Soul or Order Zone. So while you're still technically discarding a card from Freiheit, from Restand, or from Enlighten Gauge, once you discard it, it'll then go into the Order Zone, and it'll sit there, and then between 2 of these, your dot and or your strategy, you'll always have 3 orders in the drops in the Order Zone to give Combine Rusher the 20k body. And then Combine Rusher, combined with anything else, is a really good number. And because we're going to have hand and a halfway, the counter blast on Combine Rusher is very easily paid for. Like, you're counter blasting 1 every turn for Avantgarda, and then counter charging with the hand and a halfway. So then the only other counter blast cost in the deck becomes your habitable zones and your Combine Rushers. And you don't expect to be using all of them in a single game. So being able to like spam out a 20k body on demand after discarding this, say turn 1, turn 2 ride deck, can then give you a bit more aggro power and a bit more value there. So I actually really like the idea of Combine Rusher and Eigen. I think the only weakness to it right now is that we don't have a way to reliably search or dig for Eigen early on. So you can't really like discard it for Persona Ride. You can maybe try and dig for it and then discard it with Avantgarda. And that's not the end of the world. The problem is that you really want to have them in the Order Zone. You really want to get to 3 orders before you get to grade 3, so that you can abuse the strength of Combine Rusher in the early game. And then sure, by the time that you actually like get Eigens to discard off of Avantgarda and have 3 orders, Combine Rusher will still be useful. It just won't be as insane as it would have been if you saw it early, like in say Orfist or old Everdex. But I do think this is still a very valid package. Again, the question is just what do you cut, because Freiheit's important, Habitable Zone's important, and I think having Enlighten Gauge to recycle your low order count is also very important. And there's definitely no way that you're playing both this package and this package. Despite the fact that this could theoretically search for your Eigens, that's 8 grade 2s you need to find space for, and this deck definitely does not have room to find 8 grade 2s, because in my opinion, these 7 are never ever ever being cut. So you will be eating into like hand and a half ways. You've got like 6 slots here, otherwise you have to eat into your orders, which is also just not what you want to be doing at all. So it is a little bit tough, but this is the list I've personally settled on because it's the one that feels most fluid to me. Now, I will mention that only playing 4 strategies can sometimes be like quite concerning. Like I've had a few games where I've damaged like 1 or 2 strategies, and then the game just became pray to God that my opponent doesn't retire the Enlighten Gauge, so that I can just keep recycling this over and over again. Which is, again, not ideal, but I think those situations will be far and few between. And this value is made up, a lot of the time, is made up by the fact that you're not having to play these quote-unquote bricks in the early game. You don't have you've got a little bit more shield to play with in terms of like discardable 5Ks or bodies that you can call down to the board to boost for 10 and then intercept for 5, stuff like that. So overall, the deck hasn't changed a huge amount. It's just become a little bit more resource effective, and the numbers are slightly better, and you've got this little extra reach line of play to make your numbers better. So like, as opposed to say having to counter blast 1, hoping that you open the Dragon Tree grade 1. Beyond that though, like I said, Canada Halfway really revolutionizes the deck. Like, you have so much more plussing, you've got so much more resources to play with, you can just commit to the board way more freely. You know that all you need is just the 1 Enlighten Gauge, and then you can just start playing the game theoretically forever as long as you keep finding your Persona rides. And yeah, like there's not really a lot to say other than this gets cut for Ala d'Argento if/when we get Ala d'Argento. But until then, I think this is the list that I'm really, really happy with. Again, it's not like the best deck in the format. It doesn't compete with like Ava, Gandiva, or whatever. Like, I'm still playing Gandiva for tournaments. I still will be playing Gandiva for tournaments. But this is just a deck that's really fun to have, really fun to pilot. And I think if you like start learning the lines and you get comfortable with it, there's a lot of skill expression that's possible in the deck. So I'll also put a deck log link code for this down below if you want to like have something to copy, try it out for locals. But yeah, that's it for now. This is the updated list of BT10. Stay tuned for when I eventually gush about when Ala d'Argento comes out in English, or who knows, maybe this deck will get some support in like set 13 or something. Here's praying. My hopes aren't high, but we'll see what we get. But yeah, that's going to be it for this Yellow Card TCG video. As always, thank you for watching. Same old YouTube algorithm engagement stuff, like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah. And Tony and I will see you back here very, very soon. But until then, don't go anywhere, stay cool, bye bye.